The Great Waves of Change, Navigating the Difficult Times Ahead. Chapter 10, The Great Waves and the Hidden Reality of Contact, as revealed to Marshall Vion Summers on June 6, 2008, in Boulder, Colorado. Part of the great waves of change for humanity is that it must face the reality that it is not alone in the universe or even within its own world. For expeditionary forces from the greater community, from the physical universe, are in the world today and have been here for some time, interfering in human affairs, manipulating human perception, promoting human conflict, acting surreptitiously behind the scenes, taking people against their will, and subjecting them to often terrible experiments, turning their minds so that they will become supportive and allegiant to this intervention. While you have been living your life under normal circumstances, great things have been going on behind the scenes, things that the public has no idea of. And though many people have seen craft flying in their skies, and countless sightings have been reported, the mystery of this presence in your world has remained undercover, behind the scenes, out of public view. Great effort has been taken by many of your governments to discourage any inquiry into this, creating a veil of secrecy and ridicule that has been quite effective in discouraging public conversation and public awareness of this great encounter, this great challenge to human freedom. No government will admit to its people that it is facing an adversary for which it has no adequate response. So the mystery of this has now been covered up by lies and deception. People have been encouraged to believe fantastic things about the alien presence in the world, thinking that it is a fantasy or that it represents some kind of wonderful story from the past. It is now so veiled in half-truths and deception, in ridicule and in fantasy, that even those people who have recognized a foreign presence in the world cannot think clearly about it. It has been so confused, so muddled, so turned, and so changed. Certain people have even been encouraged by the governments to tell fantastic and wild stories, to create discredit upon anyone who might seek to present anything true or real, or to attempt to generate an honest conversation, a public debate, a public awareness. Into the world at this time when the great waves are beginning to emerge have come other forces, competitors from the universe. They come not with weapons. They come not with an armada of vessels. They come with the power of persuasion and deception. Their technology is advanced, but what they rely upon is their ability to influence the minds of those who live here. In this greater community of intelligent life in the universe, war as it is known within this world is actually far more rare than you might realize. Other ways have been found to overcome opponents: trickery, deception, manipulation, projection, and power in the mental environment, an environment that humanity knows almost nothing about. While influence is attempted in every household, in every nation, influence in the greater community has taken on far greater and more subtle demonstrations, and is far more powerful as well. Those races who are seeking to gain access to the world want to preserve its resources. They see humanity as one of the resources. They are not here to destroy you, but to use you your intelligence and your strength, to use you to serve them. And they will take whatever time is required, using extremely subtle means to achieve this end. The world is so valuable. It is so rich biologically, and it has such a great and important strategic position. You do not realize what a prize this world is, and how valued it is to those few races that are aware of it, and who seek it for themselves. They will compete for it, but they will use similar means and tactics. They will attempt to weaken the strongest nations by engaging them in intractable conflicts, by encouraging the overuse of the resources of the world, resources that they themselves do not need. They will spread discontent. They will promote the idea that human leadership cannot save the world, that humanity is essentially destructive, and that only a foreign power, only the power of the intervention, can save humanity from itself, from destroying its world, and from succumbing to the great waves of change. You now have competitors from beyond. They are not warriors. They do not conquer through force. Their powers are subtle but extremely effective in a world where people are divided and in conflict with one another. In a world where people are ignorant of the realities and requirements of life in the universe around them. In a world where people are superstitious. In a world where people have not yet learned to trust the deeper knowledge that God has placed within them. All of these things make you vulnerable to persuasion and manipulation. And while the intervention will seek to remain hidden and out of view for the majority of the people in the world, those who are aware of its presence will be influenced. Many will be taken, and their minds will be turned towards the intervention. Many will be used for reproductive experiments. Many will be taken and never returned to this world. It is so fantastic. It is so incredible that people can hardly believe that something like this could happen. Yet people have forgotten that they are a part of nature, that competition and intervention are parts of nature, that species try to compete with each other for environment and for resources. Humanity now has reached a position of power and has developed a worldwide infrastructure that foreign races can use. Humanity is facing the great waves of change. So it is uniquely vulnerable to the kind of influence and persuasion that will be presented here. People will say, "This is incredible. I do not believe this." But you must ask yourself, who has been flying in your skies for the past many decades? Who has been churning panic among your governments for the past many decades? And why would nations act so foolishly, outstripping their resources and engaging in conflicts with others, conflicts that cannot be won? You may say it is human greed and foolishness, but that is not sufficient. For humanity is at a great turning point, a turning point that will lead either to its permanent decline or to its future ascension as a united and powerful race. It is at this great threshold that certain other races will exert their influence, because the resources of the world are valuable and because humanity is viewed as a resource by these forces. Great care will be taken to encourage a shift in authority, a reliance upon foreign power, a reliance upon foreign technology. All the while, the intervention will present itself as a benign and uplifting force to those few people who have become aware of it, and especially to those who have come under its influence. This complicates your situation. It indeed creates a great barrier of recognition for people. So much confusion, deception, and ridicule have been planted now in the human awareness that people, especially in the more wealthy nations, are afraid to even think about these things, thinking that if they do so, they will be foolish. They will appear foolish to others. That is why a new message has to be given now. For humanity is at the critical turning point, which will determine whether it will be a failing civilization, a failing race in a world that will eventually come under foreign power and domination, or whether it will exercise its greater intelligence, its greater power, to become a united and free race within a greater community of intelligent life in the universe. You must see that you are the native peoples of this world and learn the lessons of intervention. Learn the lessons that have taught you what has happened to native peoples when they encountered forces from beyond their awareness, forces displaying different and perhaps greater technology, forces that they did not understand, forces that they mistook for some kind of spiritual entity or spiritual emissary. History tells you how great civilizations have capitulated to small groups of clever and deceptive invaders. Especially later in the history of the world, this has been demonstrated repeatedly. Entire nations and cultures, even today, are falling under persuasion of foreign powers by dependence on foreign technology and by the persuasion of the intervention itself. Now all of humanity is facing this. Now all of humanity represents the native peoples of this world, facing intervention by small expeditionary forces who are here to begin to turn humanity against itself, to gain influence, to gain ascendancy, to unite with people psychologically and emotionally, and in some cases, even biologically. In this way, humanity could be overtaken without any signs of overt violence. This is how a more intelligent and united race overtakes a much larger but weaker and divided race. You are now facing skills you have not yet cultivated. You are now facing a deception that is doubly difficult to discern because of the intervention's intentions to deceive and because of the difficulty and confusion that human beings themselves have sown around this most fundamental and consequential event. The Creator of all life will not allow humanity to simply be overtaken through deception, through guile, through manipulation, without a great warning. The new message has given this warning. It has even called upon your potential allies in the universe to send spies to view this intervention and to give their report. These spies have never visited the earth, but they have witnessed the intervention and have sent their report in a series of briefings from the allies of humanity. You do not know who these races are, but their testimony is essential for your development and preparation for the greater community. When you put all these pieces together, the picture becomes very clear. The human family is now struggling, facing a world in decline, facing a world of diminishing resources, facing the ever greater risk of competition, conflict, and war amongst its divided nations and peoples. Into this, competitors come to use these situations to their advantage and to prey upon human weakness, superstition, and conflict. If you could look at the history of humanity, particularly the recent history of humanity, where other alternatives to force have been used to gain control of other nations and peoples, you will see that the intervention today is following a very familiar pattern. It is just that humanity is not used to being in this position. It believes it is ascendant. It believes it is powerful. It does not recognize that another race could come and take advantage of its weakness, its conflicts, and its superstitions. All of these circumstances work against you now, and that is why a new message has been sent into the world to warn and prepare humanity for the great waves of change and for the reality of encountering a greater community of intelligent life. People do not know anything about life in the universe. And that is why this education is so fundamental and essential. Even your great scientists would think that anyone who would come to visit would be fascinated with humanity, would want to share science with humanity, would want to share technology with humanity, and would want to help humanity. And yet, in reality, the first races that you will encounter directly will be resource explorers and economic collectives, those who are here to take advantage of an immense opportunity and who will take advantage of your place in history, your circumstances, your tendencies, and your ignorance. This warning about the intervention must be part of your education now, or you will underestimate the power of the times in which you live. You will underestimate the power and the dangers of the great ways of change, and how they can be used against you by others whom you do not recognize. These visitors to the world are not multidimensional beings. They are not from the spirit world. They are not angels or demons. They are physical beings like you, driven by the same needs that drive humanity: the need for resources, the need for control, the need for wealth, and the need for stability. There is no one in the world who can give you a greater community education, who can provide to you wisdom from the greater community. This really must come from God. Part of this preparation must come from those few races who are aware of you, who could be your future allies, for their testimony is crucial to your understanding. In the greater nature of things, advanced and successful races must pass on their wisdom to emerging worlds such as your own, and they must do this without actually interfering in these worlds. This represents a greater tradition in the universe than you are yet aware of. But you are now the beneficiaries of this, and such a gift of wisdom must be given without manipulation and without intervention. That is why those races who are intervening in the world today represent those who would seek to take advantage of a weak and divided humanity. You must have great strength to face this. You must be able to gather the courage within yourself to face this. If you make a mistake here, if you do not recognize your situation and your opposition, then you will make a great and perhaps fatal error. That is why this gift from God, this gift of profound love and regard for humanity, must be given with great urgency and great seriousness. You do not realize what a prize you are living on, this beautiful world, and how rare such worlds are in the universe, and how advanced technological nations have outstripped their home worlds and must now search and travel for resources. In fact, this is not a mystery. This is part of nature, nature that you can understand. The history of the universe is not so different from the history of your world, where the strong will dominate the weak if they can. This is why you cannot be complacent. You cannot be foolish and self-indulgent. You cannot be lazy and indolent in the face of either the great waves of change or this intervention from the greater community in which you live. This represents the great warning that the new message is providing. Yet the new message provides a blessing and a preparation, for humanity has the power to offset this intervention and to face and navigate the difficult times ahead within your world. Humanity has sown the seeds of its own demise through misuse and overuse of the world, but this can be mitigated to a great degree, and adaptation can occur. But to do this, humanity will have to unite. It will have to end its ceaseless conflicts and prepare to face a world in decline and to face competition from the greater community. Here your times have the power to either defeat you or to unite you and uplift you. The decision rests not only with governments, but with each person. Their ability to face change, to respond to change, to prepare for change, to adapt to change, and to unite together for mutual security. For the emphasis now must not be on the national security for one nation alone, but on security for the entire world. Interventions such as you are facing now will continue, because you are a weak and divided race living on a beautiful planet. This will draw others here to attempt, primarily through persuasion and guile, to influence humanity to unite with them, to become dependent upon them, and to trust in them. These persuasions will not cease, even if this intervention is thwarted. It is like the young girl entering the big city, thinking that everyone will be her friend, not having an idea of how she could be preyed upon and taken advantage of, and all of the myriad persuasions that can be placed upon her to acquiesce, to give herself over. This is the complexity and challenge of living in physical reality. Yet God has given you a deeper knowledge that cannot be manipulated, that cannot be persuaded, and that cannot fall under any kind of persuasion, whether its source be human or from beyond the world. Knowledge within you only responds to God and to knowledge within others. It cannot be manipulated. It cannot be persuaded, and that is why it represents your greatest strength, your core strength, the most reliable aspect of yourself. That is why knowledge and the emergence of knowledge will play a key role in determining the outcome for humanity, which at this moment remains unsure and unresolved. Knowledge is the most powerful force in the universe, and the intervention is not using it, or it would not be intervening here. Humanity has a rich spiritual heritage, despite its many errors. You do not realize what a great advantage you have in these initial encounters with life in the universe. You do not recognize your strengths. It is your weaknesses that will be preyed upon by this intervention and by any future interventions. That is why it is your strength that must be encouraged, that must be revealed, and that must be shared, acknowledged, and brought to bear. That is what the new message emphasizes. You have no idea how to prepare for the greater community. There is no one in the world who knows how to do this. Either a foreign power could teach you this, or God could teach you this. However, a foreign power would be unlikely to do that unless they had a special interest here, unless they had designs of their own. So the message must come from God. Those allies who have sent their wisdom will not intervene. For the truth is, humanity is not ready to encounter beneficial races in the universe. You do not have the unity. You do not have the power. You do not have the discernment or the wisdom. And you do not yet have the discretion. Real beneficial contact with life in the universe may not happen until humanity has faced and overcome the great waves of change. But in the interim, others will attempt to intervene, to take advantage of increasing human conflict and uncertainty, the uncertainty and conflict that can be generated by the great waves of change themselves. Do not fall into the trap of thinking this is about love or fear. That is a fool's discernment. It is about wisdom or no wisdom. It is about responsibility or irresponsibility. It is about seeing the truth or not seeing the truth. It is about responding to reality or not responding to reality. Eventually, you will have to overcome your fear to gain a greater strength and a greater objectivity. But that is the goal. To reach this position of clarity and strength, you must face the great threshold that all humanity is now encountering. You must prepare for it, and you must outgrow your childish fantasies and your foolish distractions. Particularly in the wealthy nations, people who have been used to losing themselves in their pleasures, their hobbies, and their addictions must now awaken to the reality that their preeminence in the world is being challenged, and that the earth itself will not be able to provide for them, what they are used to receiving from it. The poorer people of the world understand deprivation. They understand intervention. They understand manipulation, for they have been living under it and suffering under it for so very long. It is the wealthy people who are ignorant, who are blinded. It is they who must bring to bear the strengths of humanity. It is they who must unite the nations to preserve human freedom and sovereignty in this world, and to assure that human civilization does not crumble under the weight and the force of the great waves of change. You must hear the power of this message. You must have strength of heart. You must have courage. If you run away, there will be no place to hide, and you will only weaken your position, making you more vulnerable in the future. Time now is of the essence. Time to see, time to know, time to prepare, and time to encourage human unity and human freedom. You do this not only for its own merits, but to secure humanity's ability to face the great waves of change, and to face an intervention that to this day operates with very little human awareness and very little human resistance. Do not think that any foreign power would come here to try to help you without wanting something from you. Do not think any foreign power would extend itself to humanity and its difficult circumstances, expending this wealth and this energy, unless they had a great and secret motive. History teaches you that intervention is always carried out for self-interest, and that the races who face intervention, should they succumb, will be devastated by it and in some cases destroyed entirely. You have seen this in your history. It is known in your world. It is part of your experience of life and of nature. You must be realistic. You must be honest. The situation is not as confusing as you think it is. The cloud of confusion is perpetuated by forces both human and alien, who seek to keep humanity out of the picture, who want to keep humanity divided, weak, and unresponsive. But the picture itself can be easily seen if you have the courage to see and the right information and understanding. But it creates a deceptive environment, this intervention. It has many human allies now who are part of its deception, who will speak of the great alien presence, its gifts of technology, and its promise for humanity's future. Be very careful now. Be very careful and use discernment. Do not fall under such persuasions perpetuated by powers that have never revealed their true purpose and meaning, that function here in secret, that are engaged in many activities, many of which are nefarious in nature. Reserve your judgment until you can learn and see more clearly. The blessing that the new message is presenting is the recognition and assurance that humanity has a greater power, the power of knowledge. Humanity has a long tradition of religion and spirituality that, despite its many errors, has kept humanity's ability to follow knowledge alive and has kept compassion and giving alive in this world, whereas these things have failed in so many other worlds. Humanity has great strengths and great promise. Religion and spirituality are still alive here, in contrast to where they have died out in highly technological societies. In this, you have a gift to give to the universe. But first you must survive the great waves of change, and you must survive these initial attempts at intervention into the world. You must unite. You must be self-sufficient. You must be extremely discreet. These are the three requirements for any world or association of worlds to establish, if they are to be free and self-determined in a universe full of greater persuasions, in a universe where competition is taking place on a scale you cannot even imagine. It is time for humanity to grow up, to unite, and to become strong. It is time for humanity to cease to be a weak and divided steward of a beautiful planet, and to become strong and united for the preservation of the world and for the preservation and advancement of human freedom and sovereignty here. God has given you this world to provide everything you need. Should you exhaust your natural inheritance, you will have to seek what you need from other powers in the universe. If this occurs, you will lose much of your freedom and self-determination, becoming only a client state to foreign powers who will not hesitate to take advantage of your weakened, dependent position. This gift is a gift of love. It is a gift that comes with great urgency. It calls to a greater knowledge and sobriety within you. Your intellect, your thinking personal mind that has been so conditioned by the world, may argue against it, may contend against it, may refuse it, may deny it, may try to compare it with other things, or may try to unite it with other things. But this communication is for a deeper part of you, the part of you that cannot be fooled and that is not foolish, the part of you that is strong, the part of you that is naturally compassionate, the part of you that is united and capable of union with others. Humanity has great promise to become a free and advancing race in the universe. But to achieve this, it must face the results of its own misuse of the world. It must unite. It must become strong, and it must care for this world so that its self-sufficiency can be maintained into the future. Only if you can achieve this will beneficial contact with other races be possible. And even here you will need to exercise great discernment and discretion, for freedom in the universe is rare. Free and self-determined races in the universe are rare. In this, you do not realize the great advantages that you already possess in the limited freedom that you have been able to establish here in this world, and how much it has produced a benefit for humankind. This is the world you have come to serve. It may not be what you want it to be, but it is right for why you are really here, for you have come with a greater purpose and a mission. You have come to make specific contributions to the world in concert with certain other people. This represents your greater purpose, not the purpose that your imagination creates or that your society emphasizes, but the greater purpose that is born of your union with God. You have come into the world facing great waves of change and intervention. This is the world you have come to serve. If you cannot recognize it, if you cannot face it, then your service will never be valued and never be rendered. Therefore, the first great threshold is to face the great threshold. And that is why this message, this preparation for the greater community and for the great waves of change are being given to you now.